Chapter 3 Dove. As Kiryomado, an unkempt, disturbed man, and Kutaru Aman, a clean-cut suit and tie-wearing man, strolled through the 20th Ward, their conversation turned to a past case involving the elusive one-eyed owl. Mado's eyes glinted with nostalgia as he recounted the details, his words painting a vivid picture of the hunt for the dastardly beast. Meanwhile, at Entaiku, Kin Kaneki found himself under the tutelage of Yoshimura, the enigmatic manager of the coffee shop. As Yoshimura patiently instructed him on the art of brewing coffee, Kaneki grew increasingly impatient with his own attempts. "This tastes nothing like yours," Kaneki lamented, frustration evident in his voice. Yoshimura chuckled softly, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. "Patience, my boy. Good things come to those who wait. Remember, Kaneki, Entaiku is more than just a coffee shop." Yoshimura's voice echoed in Kaneki's mind. "It is a sanctuary for our kind." Kaneki frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. "But shouldn't ghouls stay hidden from society?" he countered, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Yoshimura offered a wise smile, his eyes twinkling with hidden knowledge. "Humans may be likable creatures, but ghouls must learn to navigate their world. They are like living textbooks, teaching us the intricacies of human behavior." With a gentle pat on the shoulder, Yoshimura took his leave, leaving Kaneki to ponder his words. Lost in thought, Kaneki was startled by the sudden appearance of Hideyoshi Nagachika, his best friend's cheerful demeanor breaking through the solemn atmosphere of Entaiku. "Hey there, Kaneki," Hyde grinned, his eyes bright with excitement. "Looking sharp in that uniform. How's the job treating you?" Kaneki managed a weak smile in return, his mind still reeling from Yoshimura's revelation. It's going well," he replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "But what about you, Hyde? How are you feeling? Do you remember anything?" Tuka glared at Kaneki from the other side of the room after he asked this. Hyde's grin faltered for a moment, a shadow crossing his features. "Oh, I'm fine. I don't really remember anything about the car accident, just a few bumps and bruises," he replied, waving off Kaneki's concern. "Tuka really took care of us, didn't she? And I owe her big time." Kaneki nodded, his thoughts drifting to Nishiki Nishio. "Yes, she did," he murmured, a sense of unease settling in the pit of his stomach. Hyde eventually leaped off his seat and left, but before he walked out of the door, he exclaimed, "Man, I owe you one, Tuka. I'll buy you dinner sometime, okay?" Tuka smiled warmly. However, as she walked up to Kaneki, her face completely dropped. Tuka's voice was low but firm as she issued her warning to Kaneki, her eyes reflecting the weight of her words. "You can't allow Hyde to know the truth," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "It's too dangerous." Kaneki's brow furrowed in concern. "Tuka," he protested, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. "I can't just—" Tuka shook her head, her expression unwavering. "I know it sounds harsh," she said, her voice tinged with resignation. "But if Hyde discovers what we are, it could put us all at risk." Kaneki's heart sank at the thought, the weight of their situation pressing down on him like heavy burden. "I can't just stand by and let you kill him," he murmured, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I'm not saying we have to kill him," she said. "But if it comes to that, I won't hesitate to protect our secret." Tuka walks away. Kaneki places his hand on the countertop. "I'll just have to act like a human when I'm around Hyde," he thought. Upstairs, in Intaiku, Kaneki sat across from Yoshimura, the gentle hum of the coffee shop below providing a soothing backdrop to their conversation. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the faint scent of pastries. Yoshimura picked up a sandwich from the plate in front of him, his movements deliberate and precise. "Now, Kaneki, let me show you the proper way to eat as a ghoul pretending to be human," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. Kaneki watched intently as Yoshimura took a bite of the sandwich, his expression unchanged despite the nauseating taste. "It's important to swallow the food whole." Yoshimura explained, his tone matter of fact. Chewing it only makes the experience worse. Nodding in understanding, Kaneki tentatively picked up a sandwich of his own, his fingers trembling slightly. He took a hesitant bite, only to immediately recoil in disgust. It's awful, he muttered, his stomach churning at the foul taste. Yoshimura chuckled softly, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. It takes some getting used to, he said, his tone gentle. But with practice, you'll learn to tolerate it. Kaneki grimaced, the unpleasant taste lingering on his tongue. I never imagined it would be this difficult, he admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. Yoshimura reached out, placing a comforting hand on Kaneki's shoulder. It's all part of the learning process, he said, his voice soothing. You'll get the hang of it soon enough. As they continued to practice, Kaneki found himself slowly adjusting to the peculiar nature of ghoul life. With each bite of the sandwich, he forced himself to swallow it whole, his determination overriding his revulsion. Finally, Yoshimura handed Kaneki a small sugar cube, its surface glistening in the soft light. Here, he said, offering it to Kaneki. This will help curb your appetite without resorting to human flesh. Kaneki accepted the sugar cube gracefully, a sense of relief washing over him. Thank you, he said, his voice filled with gratitude. What's it made of? Kaneki asked. Probably best you don't know about that, Yoshimura said briskly. Yoshimura smiled, his gaze warm and reassuring. You're welcome, Kaneki, he said. Remember, you're not alone in this. We're here to help you every step of the way. However, you cannot live off of these sugar cubes. When the time comes, you have to be prepared, Kaneki. Yoshimura said this with a heavy heart. As Kaneki wiped down the counters of Intaiku, the coffee shop where he worked, he noticed the familiar figure of Ryoko Fueguchi entering with her daughter, Hanami. Trailing behind her, Ryoko was a petite woman with gentle features. Her dark brown hair let down to just below her shoulder blades, while Hanami, a young girl of around 10, had a shy smile and big, curious eyes. Hey Ken, looks like our regulars are here, Tuka remarked from behind the espresso machine, catching Kaneki's attention. Kaneki nodded, watching as Ryoko and Hanami settled into their usual corner booth. He had heard rumors about them, whispers among the ghouls who frequented Intaiku. They were known as the Fueguchi ghouls, a mother-daughter pair who were unable to hunt for their own sustenance. Curiosity gnawed at him as Tuka approached their table to take their order. The usual for you two? She asked with a polite smile. Ryoko returned the smile warmly. Yes, please, Tuka, and hot chocolate for Hanami, if you don't mind. As Tuka scribbled down their order, he couldn't help but wonder about the truth behind the rumors. They seemed so human. How could they possibly be ghouls? After delivering their drinks, Kaneki found himself stealing glances at Ryoko and Hanami as they chatted quietly. They seemed like any other mother and daughter enjoying a meal together. But Kaneki couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling that lingered in the air. The night air was thick with tension as the starved ghoul prowled through the dimly lit streets. His senses heightened in search of prey. For days he had been stalking his target, a young man named Hyde, whose scent lingered tantalizingly in the air. But tonight, hunger gnawed at his insides, driving him to desperation as he sought out any source of sustenance. Unbeknownst to him, he had stumbled into the territory of Rise Kamishiro, a notorious ghoul whose feeding ground extended through the labyrinth alleys of the city. The woman who changed ruined his life. The scent of blood hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the horrors that lurked in the shadows. As he rounded a corner, his eyes gleamed with predatory intent. As he caught sight of a lone figure ahead, it was Mado, a fearsome investigator from the Commission of Counter Ghoul, CZG, known for his ruthless efficiency in exterminating ghouls. Without hesitation, the starved ghoul charged at Mado, his hunger-fueled desperation lending him a wild, frenzied energy. But before he could even reach his target, he was met with a swift and deadly counterattack. In an instant, he felt the searing pain of his body being torn apart, his limbs torn asunder as if by an unseen force. As the ghoul's lifeless body crumpled to the ground, Amon, Mato's steadfast partner and fellow CCG investigator, emerged from the shadows, his expression stoic and unreadable. Together they surveyed the scene with practiced efficiency, their presence a chilling reminder of the ongoing battle between ghouls and humanity. Another one down, Mato remarked, his voice cold and detached as he regarded the ghoul's remains. Amon nodded in agreement, his gaze unwavering as he scanned the surrounding area for any signs of further danger. In their world, there was no room for mercy or hesitation. As members of the CCG, it was their duty to protect humanity from the horrors that lurked in the darkness, no matter the cost. The air was thick with tension as Kuriomato and Kuturo Amon made their way through the labyrinth streets of the 20th Ward, their footsteps echoing against the concrete. Both were first-class investigators for the Commission of Counter-Ghoul, their presence a foreboding reminder of the ongoing battle between humans and ghouls. As they walked, Amon couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck that sent shivers down his spine. His instinct screamed at him, warning of an unseen presence lurking in the shadows. But try as he might, he could find no trace of their observer. Mono, I can't shake this feeling, Amon muttered, his voice tense with apprehension. Mono glanced at him, his expression unreadable behind his mask. Keep your guard up, Amon. We can't afford to slip up in this ward. Meanwhile, across town, at Antaiku, Yoshimura, the enigmatic manager of the coffee shop, and a powerful ghoul in his own right, stood in quiet conversation with Tuka Kirishima, one of his employees. His expression was grave as he relayed his instructions to her. Tuka, I need you to take Kaneki to get his mask done, Yoshimura said, his voice low and urgent. Tuka's eyes widened in surprise, her objection forming on the tip of her tongue. But why? Kaneki doesn't want anything to do with ghouls. Yoshimura sighed heavily, his gaze softening with understanding. I know, but we have no choice. 2 ghoul investigators are currently patrolling the 20th Ward. Kaneki must get his mask done as soon as possible to avoid suspicion. Saturday dawned. As they walked side by side through the bustling streets of Tokyo, Kaneki found himself studying Tuka's every move, marveling at how effortlessly she blended in with the crowd, her demeanor that of an ordinary girl enjoying a day out. Curiosity burning within him, Ken couldn't help but voice his inquiry. Tuka, where exactly are we going? He asked, his voice tinged with a hint of suspicion. Tuka splashed him with a mischievous grin, her eyes dancing with amusement. You'll see soon enough, Ken. It's a surprise. Their journey led them deep into the heart of the city, where towering skyscrapers gave way to narrow alleyways and dimly lit streets. Eventually they arrived at their destination, Heisei Art Mask Studio, a nondescript building nestled amidst the urban sprawl. As they stepped inside, Kaneki's eyes widened in awe at the array of intricate masks adorning the walls, each one a masterpiece of craftsmanship. His gaze landed on the owner of the studio, a striking figure with vibrant tattoos snaking up his arms. Welcome to Heisei Art Mask Studio, the owner, Uta, greeted them with a warm smile. I've heard of you, Kaneki. Yomo speaks highly of you. Kaneki nodded in acknowledgement, a sense of intrigue stirring within him at Uta's words. As Uta began to work on Kin's mask, conversation flowed between them. Uta measured his head while they talked away. The 20th Ward may seem peaceful on the surface, but beneath that facade lies a web of suspicion, Uta explained, his voice tinged with a hint of melancholy. Rise's influence cast a long shadow over the district, leading to constant disputes over feeding grounds. Kaneki listened intently, his mind racing with newfound knowledge of the world he had been thrust into. Uda started to question Kaneki with a curious glint in his eye. So what's the story behind your eye patch? Why? It helps me make your mask. I need to know what kind of person you are. Kin hesitated for a moment before speaking, his voice tinged with a hint of vulnerability. It's because my eye tends to go out of control when I'm hungry. The patch helps keep it in check. There was a silence as Uta made sounds of, yes, yes, over and over again. What about your eyes? Kaneki said, trying to make conversation to cut through the awkwardness. Why are your eyes like that? If you don't mind explaining. Uta put his middle finger below his eye, tugging it downwards. I injected ink into my eye. Yeah, it sounds like a permanent ghoul eye, right? Kalkugan. Sorry? Kaneki said, confused. The ghoul eye is called a Kalkugan, Uta clarified. Oh, okay, Kaneki said sheepishly. Uta attempted to give a warm smile, however, Kaneki still saw it as a little creepy. No worries. Uta got extremely close to Kin's face. He could feel his hot breath pushing against the very moisture in his eyes. Uta's expression was thoughtful. And what about Tuka? What's your impression of her? Kin's lips twitched into a very weary smile. She's scary, he admitted, unable to suppress a chuckle at the memory of Tuka's fiery demeanor. Uta chuckled softly in response, backing away and shaking his head. But you see, she's a hard worker. Balancing life between the ghoul and human worlds is no easy feat. I admire her resilience. Kaneki nodded in agreement. But you see, Uta remarked once again, his voice low and contemplative, Tuka is crossing an incredible tightrope. She's associated with both the ghoul and human worlds. With her job at Antaiku and the school she attends, Kin's brow furrowed in curiosity as he listened intently to Uta's words. Intrigued by the insight into Tuka's dual existence. And Uta continued, a hint of amusement coloring his tone. I too like humans. It's always exciting when human customers enter my shop. They bring a certain energy with them that ghouls simply can't replicate. Eventually, after what seemed to be an eternity, Uta had finished. Thank you for your time, Uta, Kaneki said, his voice tinged with gratitude as he glanced at the array of masks adorning the walls. Uta offered him a small smile in return, a flicker of warmth in his dark eyes. Of course, Kaneki, I'll begin working on your mask right away. Kaneki nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Despite his initial apprehension, there was something comforting about Uta's presence, a reassurance that he was in capable hands. As Uta retreated to his workbench to begin crafting Kaneki's mask, Tuka approached him, her expression serious. Kaneki, there's something you need to understand. Tuka began, her voice low and urgent. Ghoul investigators. Doves are ruthless. If they ever catch you without your mask, they'll match your face with your identity and kill you without hesitation. Meanwhile, across town, Ryoko Fueguchi sat with her daughter, Hanami, nestled in her lap. The weight of grief hung heavy in the air as Ryoko held a mask firmly in her hand, her tears falling silently onto Hanami's sleeping face. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the tantalizing scent of sandwiches as Kin Kaneki sat at the table in Antaiku, a sense of frustration gnawing at him. Despite all the advice he had received from Yoshimura, he couldn't seem to bring himself to eat the sandwiches before him, a constant reminder of his struggle to accept his newfound ghoul nature. With a sigh of resignation, Kaneki reached for the sugar cube resting on the edge of his coffee cup, deciding to satisfy his hunger with a sip of sweetened brew instead. Hey, Kaneki, a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts, and he looked up to see Hideyosho Nagachika, approaching with a friendly smile. Hyde? Kaneki greeted him with a small smile, grateful for the distraction from his inner turmoil. Thanks, I guess. Hyde chuckled, sliding into the seat opposite Kaneki. You've been looking much better lately, remember when you used to be as pale as a zombie? Kaneki felt a flicker of gratitude at Hyde's words, a sense of warmth spreading through him at the genuine concern in his friend's voice. Yeah, I guess. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a girl, believed to be Nishio's girlfriend, who handed them a DVD promised by Nishiki Nishio. Kaneki's suspicions flared at the girl's sudden appearance, wondering if she was there to gather information on their condition and report it back to Nishiki. As the girl walked away without divulging any information about Nishiki's whereabouts, Kaneki's unease only grew, compounded by the rumors of deaths occurring at the hands of the doves in the 20th Ward. The danger of their situation weighed heavily on him, a constant reminder of the precariousness of their existence as ghouls. Turning his attention to Yoshimura's request for him to go shopping for human meat, Kaneki felt a surge of reluctance, but the assurance that he wouldn't have to kill anyone eased his consciousness enough to agree. As Kaneki and Renji Yomo ventured deeper into the forest, Kaneki couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity mingled with apprehension. He had heard whispers about Yomo, rumors that painted him as a formidable figure within the ghoul community. But now, as they walked side by side, Kaneki found himself studying Yomo's stoic demeanor, wondering what kind of person lurked beneath the intimidating facade. So, Yomo, Kaneki began tentatively, breaking the silence that hung heavy between them. What's it like being a ghoul in this ward? Yomo cast his sidelong glance, his expression unreadable under the thick morning fog. Quiet, he replied curtly, his voice low and gravelly. Kaneki frowned, feeling a surge of frustration at Yomo's terse response. It seemed the man was not one for idle conversation, and try as he might, Kaneki found it difficult to gauge his intentions. As they continued on their journey, Kaneki's agitation grew with each passing moment. Yomo seemed content to ignore him entirely. His attention focused solely on their surroundings. It was as if Kaneki didn't even exist. In a moment of distraction, Kaneki stumbled over a protruding root. His foot slipping on the uneven terrain, with a cry of surprise, he stumbled to the forest floor, his heart pounding in his chest as he braced for impact. To his relief, he found himself relatively unscathed. The durable characteristics of his ghoul physiology protected him from serious injury. As he picked himself up and dusted off his clothes, he couldn't help but feel a sense of embarrassment at his clumsiness. Are you okay? Yoma's voice cut through the silence, his tone surprisingly gentle. Kaneki nodded, a flush of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. Yeah, I'm fine, just not used to this terrain. Yomo grunted in acknowledgement, offering no further comment as they resumed their journey. As Kaneki and Yomo ventured deeper into the eerie establishment, Kaneki's apprehension grew with each step. The air hung heavy with the scent of death, a grim reminder of the darkness that pervaded the ghoul world. His senses were on high alert, every sound magnified in the oppressive silence. Suddenly, his foot thudded against something soft and yielding, and he recoiled in horror as he realized what he had stumbled upon: a lifeless body lying motionless on the ground. Yomo's gaze flickered to Kaneki, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the younger ghoul's reaction. First time? He asked, his voice heavy with implication. Kaneki swallowed hard, unable to tear his eyes from the corpse before him. Yes, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Yomo's expression softened slightly, a hint of sympathy in his gaze. Many come here to die, he explained, his voice tinged with sadness. Their own free will. Kaneki's stomach churned at the revelation, a cold shiver running down his spine. The thought of so many lives willingly extinguished filled him with a profound sense of unease. As Yomo instructed him to put the body in the bag, Kaneki hesitated, his hands trembling with uncertainty. I don't know if I can, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Yomo regarded him for a moment, his eyes inscrutable behind his mask. Without a word, he knelt beside the body, his movements methodical as he greatly placed it inside the bag. There was a solemnity to his actions, a quiet reverence for the life that he had lost. Once the task was done, Yomo stood up and turned to Kaneki, his palm pressed together in a gesture of prayer. Kaneki watched in silence, struck by the depth of emotion in Yomo's simple gesture. Ghouls have feelings too, Kaneki stated in his head. The dimly lit streets of the 20th Ward passed by in a blur as Renji Yomo navigated the winding roads. He had his grip firm on the steering wheel of his car. Kaneki sat in the passenger seat, his gaze drifting out the window as they made their way back to Intaiku. The night was quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the engine as they drove through the empty streets. Suddenly, Kaneki's attention was drawn to a figure on the sidewalk ahead, a slender silhouette bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. It was Ryoko Fueguchi, walking alone with a haunted look in her eyes. "Ryoku-san!" Kaneki called, his voice tinged with urgency. "Get in the car. It's not safe for you to be out here alone." Ryoko turned at the sound of his voice, her eyes widening in surprise as she recognized them. Without a word, she hurried towards the car, her movements quick and determined. As she climbed into the back seat, Yomo cast her a worried glance in the rearview mirror. "You shouldn't be walking the streets alone." His tone was tinged with concern. Ryoko nodded silently, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery outside. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the engine. I needed to visit my husband's grave." Kaneki's heart skipped a beat at her words, a wave of sympathy washing over him as he realized the weight of her burden. Despite the dangers that lurked in the darkness, Ryoko had braved the night to pay her respects to her late husband. "I'm sorry," Ryoko murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been such a spoiled child, relying on my husband for everything." Kaneki's heart ached at Ryoko's words, a pang of empathy stirring within him as he witnessed the depths of a mother's love for her child. In any world, it seemed a mother's concern knew no bounds. In the heart of Tokyo, where the city's bustling streets intersect with the shadow of the unknown, the headquarters of the Commission of Counter-Ghouls stood like a monolith of authority. Inside, the air was thick with tension as investigators gathered around a polished wooden table, their voices low and urgent as they discussed the latest cases. "Case 720 and 722 are still ongoing," one investigator remarked, his tone grave as he flipped through a stack of files. "But it's case 723 that's raising the most concern." The others leaned in, their interest piked as they listened intently to the details of the case. Case 723, centered in the 20th Ward, had captured the attention of the entire department. The suspect's movements were mysterious and unsettling, leaving a trail of questions in their wake. "The suspect disembarked the train at the 5th station," another investigator explained, his voice tinged with frustration. "Then, they approached a stone monument before being picked up by an accomplice in an automobile." Kutaro Amon, his brow furrowed in concentration, listened to the unfolding details with a sense of unease. He knew that time was of the essence, that every moment wasted could mean another life lost in the shadows. "We need more information," Amon declared, his voice firm and resolute. "Our morality is justice, and we must do everything in our power to restore order." As the meeting adjourned and the others dispersed, Amon lingered behind, his mind consumed by the weight of his duty as an investigator. With a determined expression, he made his way to the gravesite, the final resting place of Case 696, Asaki Fueguchi. The air was heavy, with the scent of earth and decay as Amon knelt before the grave, his hands digging into soil with purpose. With each scoop of dirt, his heart pounded in his chest, anticipation building within him as he uncovered the truth buried beneath the surface. And then, at last, he found it. A ghoul mask, worn and weathered by time. As he held it in his hands, a chill ran down his spine, the realization sinking in with a heavy finality. Case 723, Ryoko Fueguchi, was indeed a ghoul.